Welcome. Today is the 29th day of Tammuz, the last day of the month. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Av, first day of Av, and it is also the 4th of August. And we're starting a whole new book of the Pentateuch, a book called Devarim, the words, Ela Devarim. These are the words that Moses spoke to all of Israel, and in English it's called Deuteronomy. This book has a little bit of a different standing than the first four, because these are all, at least in most of what's written here, is things that three public speeches that Moses gave to the Jewish people. It is the Israelites on the eve of their entrance into the land of Canaan, just before he passes away. And the entire book was spoken, as we've said in the past, during 37 days. It says in the second verse, that he started saying it on the first day of Shvat, the first day of the 5th month. And here the 5th month is counting from Tishrei. And since we have a tradition that Moses passed away on the 7th of Adar, so it was altogether 37 days of speaking to the people. He begins not just with recounting what happened, but recounting things in such a way that they are meant to recollect the problems that happened along the way from Egypt till where they are now. And so we say that these are rebukes. And again, Moses speaks this himself to the people, as it were, not hearing it from God, that this is what he should say, and later God tells him how to write it as the book of Deuteronomy, as this entire book. This rebuke is what we want to focus on, and usually what everybody focuses on, at least in the first reading. So the first reading is short, but again it mentions places, and each one of the places that it mentions is either an actual place where something happened, or it's not an actual name place, but rather it's sort of like a hint, an allusion to some episode that occurred. Now this whole idea of rebuking is something that we do a lot of, and I wanted in this case to give an example for myself, so that we can, at least I can connect more to the idea here. The sages say that, they ask, why did Moses wait until now to tell the people off? Meaning, to tell them that they haven't been model subjects of God. Why does he wait until the last 37 days of his life? Why didn't he do it before? And the main answer is that he waited to see that his words would be accepted. And there's different conditions about what would allow someone to accept a rebuke. And in this case, one of the things that's said is that only if a person is near his the end of his life will people actually listen to him. In other words, the person who's hearing the rebuke, the person who's being told off, has to feel that the person who's telling him off has nothing to gain from it anymore. I mean, it's not going to help them in any way. So, for instance, if a person's sick in bed and wants his children to take care of him, and he says to them, "You've been negligent in taking care of me," and so on. So people understand this as his trying to better his conditions. But if this is his deathbed, he's not going to get anything more out of this. Then a person is more open to hearing that what he's done is wrong for himself, that the problem is in himself and not what he's going to give or not going to give in the future to this person who's telling him off. So I said I would share a story from myself just last week. We were driving here in the neighborhood, my whole family in the car, because we had just come back from something. And as we're a very residential area, so we don't drive very fast here, luckily. And out of nowhere, this kid comes on a scooter, on an electric scooter, and cuts me off from the left side and swerves right in front of the car and jumps on a sidewalk. And I think he thought he could pull this off because we were going pretty slow. And he didn't want to take advantage of it. And I can tell you that I didn't brake. Meaning, I did not physically see him until it was way too late, when he would have been under my wheels. That's when I would have seen him. But somehow the car braked. And so my understanding is that it wasn't me. I don't have reflexes like that, and it doesn't matter what kind of reflexes I have. I couldn't see him. Even out of the corner of my eye, because I was looking straight, he really came from the left side and just caught in front and swerved in front of me. And so first of all, the feeling was that I was saved by a higher force. It wasn't my doing. I'm not that good a driver, that I could actually brake when something like that happens. And really saved me and saved him from certainly an accident. And I was very furious. And so I cut to the side to the sidewalk and stopped the car. I honked at him, of course. He didn't stop. And I got out of the car and I chased him. And I chased him for quite a bit. I'm in good shape, but he was on a scooter. And eventually he caught on to the fact that I'm chasing him. And he doubled down on it. I guess he was afraid or something that I would, I don't know, do what to him. And after a few minutes, I did catch up with him. And I was furious. And I caught myself, and thankfully I caught myself and had my wits about me in that moment. And I said to myself, what am I going to say to him? He thinks I'm furious at him because he did something wrong and I'm just angry at him. He's not going to understand it as, it's like a 14, 15-year-old kid. He's not going to understand it as something that is meant for him. Meaning the situation is all wrong. It's just not going to work. So I told him, look, do you know why I chased you down? He says, yeah, I guess I did something wrong. I said, yeah, you almost killed yourself. But that was it. I couldn't find anything else to say. I felt no matter what I would say, he would take it the wrong way. And so I just, looked at him for a few seconds and said, I hope you love your life more than you just demonstrated before. And I walked away. And the feeling was that it was impossible to chastise there. Why? Because I myself was still furious. And even though I wasn't going to take it out on him or anything like that, but you could see it. I knew you could see it. And chastisement, rebuking someone, always has to come from a place of caring for the other person. And that's what Moses is doing. He does it at the end of his life because he wants people to know that whatever amount of rebuke he's giving, and whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, you'll hear it. You'll hear it because you feel that the person has your interest in mind and not their own. And so the same thing is true with children, the same thing is true with our spouse sometimes. Criticism, rebuke, chastisement, all these things, they don't work if the underlying sentiment is not one of love and caring. They just don't work. And we want it to work. If you're just doing it to vent, it's probably better to find another way. But if you're doing it because you actually care about the other person, you have to make sure that you're coming from a place that's calm. You're not coming in order to exact any kind of revenge on them. You're not coming to be furious at them, to vent and so on. You're really saying things that may have a positive impact on the future of this person that you're talking to. And if you can't do that, then the sages say, just as much as it is a mitzvah, it is a good deed to say things that can be heard by the other side, it is just as much a mitzvah not to say things that cannot be heard. In other words, if you think you're doing a good deed, then the good deed sometimes is to stay silent. Because as much as you may know the truth, and in my case what this kid did was just stupid and life-threatening and just plain old being young and not understanding how the world works and how vulnerable you are on one of these scooters. Still, if I want to make a difference in this person's life, if I want them to be able to protect themselves in the future, I have to come from a place where I'm calm, where my words can be heard, where the other side feels that I really am looking out for them, that I really care about them. And that's the nature of the way that God wants us to understand the rebuke of the destruction of the temple. And I really recommend, I really hope that you get a chance to see the playlist. There's a series on this channel called Why Exile is Not a Punishment. If you haven't watched it, now's the time. These are the last 9 days of the 3 weeks, the most mournful period of the Jewish calendar, where we mourn the destruction of the temple. But as opposed to previous generations, which were in a state of receiving the rebuke from a place of chastisement, we're in a place where we can hear what God has to say from a completely different place. And we can see it with all the loving kindness and all the miracles that we witness in our lifetimes, and hopefully we'll witness again and again in the coming weeks and days. Can hear the goodness of what God wants us to do, to change our ways in order to benefit from the rebuke, to benefit from this time period in the Jewish calendar. Thanks for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow.